Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinel Report. I hope you enjoyed a wonderful Independence Day weekend. Sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. I hope you were celebrating our country's birthday and independence for the whole weekend. I know what we did. We read the Declaration of Independence to our children and had a great time honoring the memory of all those who sacrificed so much so that we could live free and independently today in America. Lots going on in the world today, folks. The BRICS summit coming up, the deep state being exposed, the different theories about how the world got to looking like it does coming under fire. Legislation to restore our ability to purchase incandescent light bulbs. One of our guests today says this is actually not just a curiosity, it's really important for your health and so much more. The horror in Texas as well. So we'll get to all that and then more. First, a word from the word. This comes out of 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 16. The Bible reads, "Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover up for evil, but living as servants of God." And that's the great thing, folks, about being in Christ is we have liberty, but we're not going to use that liberty for license. We're not going to use that liberty for bad things. We're going to use it to serve one another, to love one another, and to glorify God. And we need to be striving to do that in all that we do. Before we get to the news, folks, I do want to encourage you to get over and check out our friends at Genesis Gold Group. If you go to goldwithalexnewman.com, you'll see all the great stuff that they've got going on there. They'll send you free reports so that you can understand the markets better. And when Genesis Gold was first conceived, the co-founder, Jonathan Rose, who's actually a regular guest on this program, he knew two things were necessary to be able to thrive in this really competitive precious metals industry. The first was no more deceptive marketing tactics like Big Gold uses to entice customers. And secondly, he knew that they needed spiritual guidance and a solid biblical foundation if they were going to succeed in reaching Americans who want to protect their savings, who want to protect their wealth from the very tumultuous markets that we're dealing with right now. In fact, what he said, if we're going to live up to our namesake, we have to be truly driven by biblical principles, not only as individuals, but as a company. And so I've been dealing with them for a long time. I've been buying gold and silver from them, and I have always had the greatest experiences with them, which is why, by the way, we chose them as our partner. There's tons of gold companies out there that want to sponsor this program, that want to be part of what we're doing here, and we chose Genesis Gold very deliberately. So go check them out, goldwithalexnewman.com, goldwithalexnewman.com. No obligation. They'll send you some free reports that I think will be really useful to you as you consider how to navigate these very difficult economic times that we find ourselves in. Now, going to the news, folks, Elon Musk has officially formed a new political party after his split with Donald Trump over the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. He says on his social media platform X, when it comes to bankrupting our country with waste and graft, we live in a one-party system, not a democracy. He says today the America Party is formed to give you back your freedom. The Republican Party has a clean sweep of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches and still had the nerve to massively increase the size of government, expanding the national debt by a record $5 trillion. So there's a lot to unpack here, folks. Donald Trump, of course, has said that this is Elon Musk with sour grapes because some of his subsidies were cut off. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. Some very astute observers have talked about, is this the plan to bring America into technocracy now? Are we going to get the liberals and the conservatives all lumped into the same new party that will then usher in technocratic governance? We don't know, but we will definitely keep you posted as this story unfolds. If somebody could break the two-party or uniparty system that we have, it would be earth-shattering when it comes to the politics of this country. So we're going to be paying very close attention to that, and we will continue to bring you updates. Now, billionaire Palantir co-founder, Bilderberg bigwig, PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, the ultimate tech bro. Yes, he's been getting closer to the Trump administration, which bothers me quite a bit. He did an incredibly weird interview with the New York Times. I always get that wrong. Slimes, Times, they just sound so similar. And he said some really weird stuff, folks. He's openly promoting transhumanism. He's talking about giving ourselves immortal bodies through merging with technology. And folks, I'll tell you what, these people behind so much of this tech that is taking over our lives, that is taking over they strike me as mad scientists. But I want to let you listen to a little segment of this super bizarre interview with Peter Thiel, who, by the way, is involved in so many different elements of our government. Listen to this.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes,
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in this.
Should the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so, you know, it's always, I don't know, you know, yeah, transhumanism is this, you know, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or I don't know, transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross dresses, and a transsexual is someone where you change your, I don't know, penis into a vagina, and we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. It's the critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's, man, it's so pathetically little. And okay, we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough. Like that transhumanism is just changing your body, but you also need to transform your soul, and you need to transform your whole self. And so,
right. But the other, wait. I generally agree with what I think is your belief that religion should be a friend to science and ideas of scientific progress. I think any idea of divine providence has to encompass the fact that we have progressed and achieved and done things that would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. But it still also seems like, yeah, the promise of Christianity in the end is you get the perfected body and the perfected soul through God's grace, and the person who tries to do it on their own with a bunch of machines is likely to end up as a dystopian character.
Well, it's let's articulate this.
And you can have a heretical form of Christianity, that says something else.
I don't know. I think the word nature does not occur once in the Old Testament, and so you know, if you and there is a word in which a sense in which the way I understand the Judeo-Christian inspiration is it is about transcending nature. It is about overcoming things. And, and the closest thing you can say to nature is that people are fallen, and that's the natural thing in a Christian sense, is that you're messed up. And that's true. But, there's some ways that, with God's help, you are supposed to transcend that and overcome that.
Folks, I don't even know what to make of that. All right. But obviously, this is not Christian. Okay. There's nothing biblical about merging with technology to have immortality and being as gods. In fact, that's the oldest line in the book, Genesis chapter 3. We've talked about that here many times, where it's literally what Satan said in the garden, right? Ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. You won't surely die. Baloney. This is crazy. Now, this guy, Peter Thiel, homosexual activist, deeply involved with the institutions of the deep state, now deeply involved with this Palantir effort to kind of merge with the government and build a social credit score dossier on every American. This stuff is weird, folks. It's weird. And we need to keep our eyes on this like a hawk. This isn't just some crazy transhumanist kook. This is a guy with access to the highest levels of government power in the United States and around the world. This is a guy whose technology systems govern now huge parts of all of our lives, and we need to be watching them like a hawk. Now, Donald Trump has suggested that we need criminal charges for some of the Biden-era officials who betrayed our country. He mentioned specifically Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who opened up the border. Check this out.
This is beautiful. Here it is.
Why hasn't he been arrested yet? Obviously you guys are cleaning up the mess that was made deliberately for the past 4 years, and so people want accountability. It's great to see that the border is secured, and it's great to see the state level cooperation. But I guess I would ask you, why hasn't he been held accountable, or anybody really?
Well, pardons were given out by to many people, and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings. And they should be arrested, but they were given pardons. Was he given a pardon, Mayorkas? Was he not?
I don't believe so.
Well, I'd take a look at that one, because what he did is it's beyond incompetence. Something had to be done. Now, with that being said, he took orders from other people, and he was really doing the orders. And you could say he was very loyal to them, because it must have been very hard for him to stand up and sit up and, talk about what he allowed to happen to this country and be serious about it. So he was given orders. If he wasn't given a pardon, I could see looking at that. In fact, why don't you take a look at it, Kristen? He was impeached, but yeah, it was just a fake impeachment. It was a fake impeachment. Why don't you take a look at it? I think he was so bad. They were all so bad. Look, it was the worst president in the history of our country. We've had some bad ones, but he was the worst president. But somebody told Mayorkas to do that, and he followed orders, but that doesn't necessarily hold him harmless. So take a look at it. It's a very good question.
Yeah, very good question indeed. I actually just earlier today got done with a 30-minute interview with the great General Michael Flynn. I would encourage you to check that out. That was for a different program, Behind the Deep State, that we do every week. It goes out through the New American Magazine and also through VCY Ministry. So check that out. We're talking about these very issues, holding some of these Biden-era officials and Obama-era officials accountable for the lawlessness, the betrayal of our country. But considering what's going on at the DOJ, none of us are going to be holding our breath, folks. The DOJ just came out with its supposed conclusion that Epstein had no client list and that he really did kill himself. Folks, if you believe that, I've got some nice beachfront property in Nebraska. You'll definitely want to contact me after the show. That is utter foolishness. Okay. And I don't know who they expect is going to believe this nonsense, but they put it out there. And I'll tell you what, a lot of us are really disappointed. I spent half an hour with Kash Patel before he became FBI director. You can go watch that interview. And they said they're going to go after these people, and yet nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is not good, folks. Now, meanwhile, the lawlessness is escalating. We've got acting ICE Director Todd Lyons saying left-wing activists are actually now targeting the children of ICE agents. And, of course, it's just getting more and more out of control. Meanwhile, we have the United Abominations and their human rights bureaucracy coming over to investigate the United States. Joe Biden invited them in. And wow, surprise, they are not happy with what they're seeing. They don't like Donald Trump's policy proposals. They don't like the idea of getting the feds out of the classroom. They don't like states like Florida and Texas trying to protect children from this crazy LGBT, DEI, ESG brainwashing. And they also say that we need to redefine education to be a human right as per the United Nations. Well, folks, think about the implications of that. Now, if you go to their Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26 says education shall further the activities of the UN, which means if you're not doing that in the education you provide for your children, you're depriving them of their human rights. Folks, this is a full-on frontal assault. They're asking for globalized control of our education system, and we must say no. I just did a big article about that at thenewamerican.com. I encourage you to check it out. We've got part of it cross-posted over at libertysentinel.org as well, and that will be in our newsletter tomorrow, so make sure you check it out. Texas teachers, turns out, can still rape kids and not get in trouble. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. We wrote the story here some time ago based on findings by a very important activist and organization down in Texas, the Open the Books. And what happened here, folks, there was an effort to rein in this legal code that allows schools to report teachers who abuse children and commit crimes to the teacher credentialing agency instead of to law enforcement. It's got the word "or" in there. So these teachers were being reported to a teacher credentialing agency. Obviously, that's unacceptable. We had thousands of teachers accused of raping and sexually abusing children, not even handed over to law enforcement. This was investigated by the teacher credentialing agency, and almost all of them were found fit to go right back into the classroom. So we've got two heroes in this story, Assistant Attorney General Levi Fuller and Commissioner of Education Mike Morath. They are demanding that something be done here. And so if you go to openrecords.org, you'll find more on this. I've done several stories about it already, and I'll continue to do stories about this. But the legislature basically left town without enshrining into law these necessary changes. And now Governor Abbott is calling a special session. He can, if he chooses to, put this issue on the agenda, but whether he'll do it or not remains to be seen. So we'll keep you updated on this story. A very panicked United Nations is calling for a crisis meeting after all of the American funding that is going out the door. They're demanding more money, surprise, because the loss in U.S. funding is impacting their ability to keep doing what they do. So they've got at least 50 world leaders who are pledging to get involved here and help the UN meet its targets for fundraising. But of course, we will not be among those. Thank the Lord. The BRICS are meeting right now down in Brazil. And the Marxist dictator pretending to be a president, President Lula Inácio da Silva, he has basically come out of the closet and said, we're creating a new world order. It's going to be a multipolar world order, and the United States is not going to be in the center anymore. And of course, the dictator of Russia, Vladimir Putin, is also fully on board with this at the summit. He said the unipolar system of international relations that once served the interests of the so-called golden billion is losing its relevance. And this, by the way, folks, was brought about by the Council on Foreign Relations. From start to finish, we've been exposing them all along. Now, there was a big socialism conference, Socialism 2025, and they had a bunch of crazy socialist professors mooching off of taxpayers, promoting revolution in our country. Here is Princeton professor Lorgia Garcia Pena at the conference on how to dismantle universities in America itself.
Get the university's money to do the work you want to do to dismantle the university within. Students are going to get radical.
Yeah, it gets crazier from there, folks. Here we got a longtime Marxist theorist David McNally. He is now the Distinguished Professor of History and Business at the University of Houston, talking about what revolution looks like.
Oppressed people have to create a set of revolutionary institutions to take power away from their oppressors.
Yes, indeed. Now we've got a apparently former Marxist-Leninist armed insurgent talking about this. Listen.
The question about violence of self-defense, I think, is really important. I would not talk about this on a camera, but I was part of, a revolutionary movement in Chile. Yes. No, I'm saying, and I could talk about it in other moments. So, yeah. No, I wasn't gonna, yeah. We're all like, so, yeah.
Yeah, not good, folks. Not good at all, right? We've got violent left-wing lunatics who want to take down our country. Now, Robert F. Kennedy has announced that the CDC covered up an internal study which found a 1,135% increase in the risk of autism from the hepatitis B vaccine that they inject into newborn babies in this country. We've got to get to the bottom of this. Somebody needs to go to jail. Obviously, the tragedy in Texas is still continuing to unfold. We've got dozens of people dead. We had a video of the water rising, but we won't show it to you. But we do have a lot of people expressing concerns about what may have been going on here. South Carolina State Representative Lee Gilreath, separate from the flooding in Texas, just came out blasting the geoengineering schemes of the government, calling for whistleblowers to come forward. And we won't show you that video. It's 3 minutes long. It's very good and very important. Also, the U.S. Coast Guard, the Sector Corpus Christi rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin is being called an American hero. He apparently helped save more than 169 lives during those devastating floods in the Texas Hill Country. And, of course, he's very humble. These were some of his first missions ever. And we thank God for men like him who are willing to put their lives and their well-being on the line for the sake of others. I've got a fascinating case in Texas, capital murder case. They're trying to send a man to the death penalty for putting abortion pills in his girlfriend's coffee and food. They're prosecuting him as a murderer. But the irony here is that if the woman had done this herself, nothing at all would have happened. Very interesting. We'll keep you updated on this case as it goes. Now, the censorship industrial complex just got a big fat punch in the nose after the state of Florida became the first state to ban public funds for advertising agencies that target conservative and independent media outlets. We're grateful to our governor here, Governor Ron DeSantis, for taking this very, very important measure. We've got to start hitting back on these tyrants that want to censor us all. Now, close to half of the children born in the UK last year had at least one foreign parent. And of course, many of those who are considered British are actually foreign as well. They're just, one generation apart from the immigrant parents. So we've got now over 40% of the births in England coming from foreigners, folks. And there's a school now in London that has no native English speakers. Critics are calling it ultimate diversity finally being achieved. It's called the Kobi Nazrul Primary School. It's named after a Bangladeshi poet, and literally not one single British child in this public school. Just a stone's throw away from the East London Mosque, one of the biggest in Europe, accommodates 7,000 Muslims. 92.5% of the population at this school are Bangladeshis who speak Bengali as their language, and the government says they're doing great. Meanwhile, the EU's got a nasty report labeling pro-family Christians as extremists. This was just released at the end of June by the European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Rights. And it's an absolute outrage, folks. Basically, you and me are extreme if we think babies are good, family is good, the gender stuff, the feminist stuff is crazy. Truly unbelievable what's going on here, folks. We're going to go to break, but before we do, I want to tell you about an incredible company that we have partnered with now. It's called Victory Nutrition International, and we've got all their products here. I never promote something that I don't know is awesome. So I'm taking all these things, and I'll tell you what, it's awesome stuff. They've got one for digestion that is amazing. They've got one for hydration. You just add this delicious little powder into your water. Way better than the garbage you get at the store, the Gatorade or whatever. It's just fantastic. They have another one. It's these Pop Rocks. And apparently they're good for your health. I haven't felt the benefit from that just yet. I just started them, but they bounce around in your mouth. Delicious. My kids love them. So I want to encourage you to check it out. If you go to their website, you'll find a lot of great products. One of them is the Trim Rocks. That's the one I'm talking about. And skip the boring pills, right? This is fun, it's fizzy, and it's a great way to support your metabolism and to have natural energy. Just put it in your mouth. It tastes like the most delicious Pop Rock candy you've ever had. Features Guai USA and green coffee bean for a gentle plant-based energy lift, and also Camu for immune support. Go check it out, folks. It's at VNI.life. There's some really, really good stuff there. And if you use the promo code Newman, folks, if you go to VNI.life/Newman, use the promo code Newman20, you're going to get 20% off your order. That's VNI.life/Newman, promo code Newman20. You're going to get a 20% discount on this deliciousness. So go check it out. You can also find it through our website on our sponsor tab, libertysentinel.org, and then go to support. Thanks for being with us, folks. We'll be right back with more from our first guest here on the Sentinel Report.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Thanks for being with us, folks. Now, there's a bill in Congress. It was introduced in the Senate by Senator Mike Lee, one of the great constitutionalists in the swamp that is Washington, D.C. It's called the Liberating Incandescent Technology Act. And kind of cute. It's the LIT Act. And what it would do is roll back all these regulations that the federal government has been imposing that ultimately ended up banning just a regular old light bulb, the incandescent light bulb that we all knew and loved that we could get for whatever it was, 99 cents at the hardware store. Instead, you got to get these weird LED things or these weird toxic filled with mercury things. And I think for a lot of people, by the way, this is also in the House. Right now, it's in the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. in the U.S. Senate. But I think for a lot of people, it's just an interesting curiosity. Like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have our old light bulbs back, but it's not something people are spending a lot of time thinking about. But our next guest, his name is Mark Baker. He's the founder of the Soft Lights Foundation. It's a nonprofit that advocates about the dangers of LED lights. He says this is actually a really significant issue for our health and well-being. He's got a degree in electrical engineering from the University of California at Santa Barbara. He's been a computer programmer, business owner, and teacher. Mark, welcome to the program. I think a lot of people think about this bill and they think it's just cute, but for you, it's actually a bigger deal than that, huh?
Yeah, it's something we've been waiting for many years, ever since Congress effectively banned the incandescent light bulb. I say effectively because they didn't outright ban it, but the U.S. Department of Energy implemented regulations that set the number of lumens per watt as a minimum to 45, whereas the incandescent light bulb has a lumens per watt of around only 10 lumens per watt. By doing that, setting that regulation by the U.S. Department of Energy, they've kind of forced out the incandescent light bulb and forced in hazardous, toxic, dangerous LED light bulbs. The big deal for us, excuse me, is that the Department of Energy was required to collaborate with the Food and Drug Administration on LED products before they did that. 21 USC 360 II requires the FDA and the DOE to collaborate together on these kinds of things because visible light is electromagnetic radiation in the visible part of the spectrum. And they were supposed to make sure that this LED lights were safe for us. And it turns out that many people are suffering really bad adverse impacts from LED light because basically it's too tense, too intense, it has weird spatial distributions, weird spectral distributions, and has digital flicker. So these impacts are severe for many people. So we would look forward to being able to purchase incandescent light bulbs again.
Yeah, I would look forward to purchasing them even before I knew all of the stuff that you just shared. Talk to us about this a little bit, Mark, because I think most of the people watching, most of the people listening to us right now have not heard that there's any danger from LED. They just heard it's cost efficient, it's going to save you money on your energy, it's a little bit more expensive. But you say that there's actually health concerns here. What evidence do we have that there are health concerns that we ought to be taking seriously?
So light is electromagnetic radiation, and electromagnetic radiation has different parts of the spectrum that can be, mostly it's hazardous, but it could also be beneficial for us. We have radio frequency section, we have a microwave section, we have ultraviolet, we have X-rays, and visible light is part of that spectrum. So we have to be careful when we're dealing with electromagnetic radiation, use it beneficially, but also regulate it to make sure that we're protected. So over a year ago, the Soft Lights Foundation started collecting what we call LED incident reports on our website, softlights.org. And over the past year, we've collected close to 350 reports of harm, people describing the adverse impacts of LED lights on their lives. People can suffer migraines, seizures, people it's circadian rhythm interruptions. So the blue rich light can really impact them, mood disorders, a lot of diseases related to the artificial light. But LED specifically, they have digital flicker, and many individuals are suffering from flicker. You can see that flicker if you take a video and then slow it down and play it back. You'll see in the background different kind of light sources flickering. And this is really dangerous for our health. We're not designed as humans to tolerate digitally flickering light. So this is one of the major problems.
Wow. And Mark, while we wait for hopefully this legislation to be signed into law, I can't believe we need a law to be able to legalize incandescent light bulbs, but here we are, America 2025. What do we do to protect ourselves? Are there different types of lights that we can get? I mean, I use these glasses that supposedly reflect blue light. Is that any benefit at all? What do we do?
Yeah, so blue light is known as a photobiological hazard. It's a major part of our life because that's how we've evolved. The sky is blue, and so it's important. It tells us when to wake up, tells us when to go to sleep, tells us when to be hungry. But it's also damaging to our eyes. So it's a combination. So we don't want artificial light with blue in it, especially at night. This is really bad. So on your computer screen, make sure you turn it to the warm red colors. And it's a systemic problem. So, the blue rich LED streetlights that the government has installed outside your house, those are bad for you. The blue rich LED headlights that are coming at you, those are bad for you. You can try putting on an orange filter or something to block some of it, but it's really a systemic problem. And so we just need to sort of protect ourselves until the government gets it together and actually does something about this.
Very good. Well, appreciate you sharing, Mark. Your organization, Soft Lights Foundation, you guys are online. Tell people how they can find out more.
Please go to softlights.org and add your name to an LED incident report if you feel that you've been impacted by LEDs. Sign our petition to ban blinding headlights, which has over 70,000 signatures at this point.
Excellent. Well, Mark Baker, thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Really appreciate it. We'll be back in touch as this legislation hopefully makes its way through Congress.
Thank you, Alex.
Absolutely. All right, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back here on the Sentinel Report with more in just a moment.
In 1776, a nation was born. Forged in the crucible of revolution, brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, we've been following what's going on in South Africa very closely for a long time here. I used to live in South Africa. It's a place that is near and dear to my heart, the people down there at least. And the situation is continuing to deteriorate, obviously. The BRICS meeting, as we mentioned earlier, is happening right now in Brazil. And the president of South Africa, who Donald Trump just exposed in front of the world at the Oval Office, is now begging for a trade deal with the United States. He's attacking us for supposedly threatening to put big tariffs on the BRICS countries. And South Africa now is desperately seeking to renew the AGOA, the African, whatever it is, free trade agreement that allows them to basically export their products to the United States without much interference. Joining us now to discuss is a very special guest. His name is, well, his pseudonym is Hendrik Johannes De Ryke. He's the author of Inconvenient Minority. He's an Afrikaner Boer activist. He's been advocating on behalf of his people for over 15 years. We have to give him a pseudonym and a nice little cartoon picture there because he works in a sensitive job in a country that we cannot mention. And so he, for obvious reasons, his name can't be disclosed. But he's just following in the tradition of his ancestors. One of his ancestors fled Europe in the 16th century under an assumed name due to religious persecution. And so now our friend Hendrik is doing the same. Hendrik, welcome to the program. What do we make of the situation between the United States and Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC regime in South Africa?
Alex, let me just say thank you for having me on your show. It's a great honor.
It's a pleasure and honor to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. So the trade deal, the ANC needs to give America an answer by this coming Wednesday. And I think what's happening right now is they want to get an extension. The ANC wants to get an extension to win time for some reason. So this is a typical playbook scenario of the ANC when it comes to these type of things. Just out of interest, just last week, Austria's president visited South Africa and declared it absolute nonsense that white South Africans face human rights violations. So the irony is striking considering Austria's institutional denial about Jewish persecution during World War II. So this is just one of the things coming in, linking with the BRICS trade deal, is this winning of time to maybe bring more people over to South Africa to counter anything that President Trump said and using it to their benefit. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, going back just a few weeks, actually, Ramaphosa was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, and Trump mentioned some of the things that you just talked about, the persecution of Afrikaners, in particular farmers, the Boers, and Ramaphosa acted all confused and indignant, and so Trump wheeled out the screen, as everybody remembers, and kind of showed some of this. Julius Malema, the former leader of the ANC Youth League, singing about kill the Boer, kill the Boer. We had Julius Malema, then the president of South Africa, when those videos were taken, saying, bring me my machine gun. We're going to shoot all the Boers. You get into this in some depth in your book, Inconvenient Minority, Documenting Afrikaner Persecution, Exposing Omission, and Fighting for Recognition in the Age of Selective Truth. Talk to us. Was Donald Trump right to raise these concerns? Was the world media right to freak out and claim that Donald Trump was just some kind of racist conspiracy theorist who's making stuff up? Who's telling the truth?
Alex, President Trump was on the money with this. And I mean, we have evidence from decades ago, building up information, facts, and it started to create a picture of what was happening. And credible people came out to try and warn the world as well. For instance, Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch, which I'm sure you probably corresponded with as well. Mm-hmm. And President Trump isn't getting just information from Elon Musk and others. You have a well-renowned intelligence service with feet on the ground in places. They advise your country and your presidency of where a country is heading, what's happening, what's, politically and so forth. And on a global scale, you've got one of the best intelligence services. President Trump knows exactly what he's talking about. He's not said anything that's not truthful. And this is hopefully where I can start with the first part of what leads into my title of my book, Inconvenient Minority.
Yeah, let's do that. Why do you call the Afrikaner, the Boer minority, why is that the inconvenient minority? What does that even mean?
Okay, so we Afrikaners has been in South Africa for nearly 400 years. We're an ethnic minority, about 6% of the population, and yes, we look white. As a minority, we are basically the opposite of the United States demographics and West in general. The title captures exactly what I discovered why we're inconvenient. We don't fit the preferred victim categories coming from all angles. We Afrikaners have been in South Africa for nearly 400 years, and basically, first, we remind Europe of colonialism, and they cannot do their great reset while our identity is on their conscience, holding them back. Then also, at the same time, the left needs whites to be perpetrators, not minorities, and should not be persecuted. Not only do we Afrikaners counter this narrative, but we also represent the traditional West. So it's not ideologically beneficial to paint us positively. Our existence hurts the narrative the left wants to paint. When you have a white minority experiencing systematic discrimination by a black majority government, it complicates the simple oppressive victim framework. Acknowledging our suffering would mean admitting the Rainbow Nation narrative isn't the same success story portrayed and sold. The blueprint adopted by the Open Borders West needs to be shown as a working miracle. If the South African miracle nation fails, it would mean to the citizens of the West their models failed. They can't afford it and will keep the cadaver on life support. That's hopefully it set the stage for what this book is all about.
Yeah.
And explains it in more detail.
Yeah, it's so important that people understand this. We don't have a lot of time left, Hendrik, but I want to talk about before we wrap today, how this is kind of a template for a much broader war against the Western world, what we used to call the free world, Christendom, the West. But real quick, one of the things you talk about in your book is this propaganda by omission, where they just hide certain facts that would kind of reveal what's really going on here. And you talk about the acceptable enemy. Break that down for us real quick.
Okay, just December 16th, we've got Blood River 1838, which commemorates the Day of the Vow, also known as Blood River, where a small group of settlers defeated an army of 10,000. The left frames this as white settlers massacring innocent Zulus, but they omit this. 6 months earlier, the king invited settler Patriot for peaceful negotiations, then murdered them under the flag of truce, killing over 500 men, women, and children. And then the same event, completely different moral framework depending on the included facts, is Sharpeville 1960. International narrative represents unprovoked police brutality, and omitted context is months before, police of all races were being brutally murdered. This doesn't justify Sharpeville, but explains the psychological state. For instance, then, when Marxist leader Julius Malema leads crowds chanting "Kill the Boer," international media calls this heritage expression. Compare that to European politicians making far less inflammatory statements who get then labeled far-right extremists. And of course, when you read left-wing newspapers, they won't call him a racist, they call him a firebrand.
Yep.
And that's just, it just shows you how hypocritical the left-wing media is.
Yep. Hendrik, I have argued for a long time that what is happening to the Afrikaner minority in South Africa is actually the broader plan for America, right? What's happening in South Africa is kind of like a microcosm of what they plan to do to the United States, to the other Christian Western nations of the world. You've been all over the world. You've spent a lot of time in various parts of the world, from Africa, Europe, way beyond. What do you make of that thesis? I mean, what can Americans learn from the Afrikaners' experience that might benefit us as we consider these very same things facing the United States?
Alex, we're a microcosm of the United States, really, and due to us being an inconvenient minority, we became the punching bag of the global left to get back at the US and the West for decades now. The left wanted to keep us in that position. For the left, we personify the West. So notice when apartheids get mentioned in articles, every time our ethnicity comes up, you'll never read about our participation in World War I, World War II, or the Korean War, fighting alongside allies. Nothing about our innovations or cultural achievements. So it's similar to what they're doing to you in America right now. We were the testing ground, or the canary in the coal mine, as we like to say. So this wasn't accidental. When President Trump acknowledged persecution and granted refugee status to white South Africans and other persecuted minorities, it struck at the foundation of the left's victim-perpetrator narrative. But the game is up, Alex. They can't keep this up. If President Trump did not do what he did, America would have been in a very bad situation. The left knows their backs are against the wall with this. So by looking at what's happening in South Africa, it's like a crystal ball. We are like, I would say, 30 years ahead of America. And if it wasn't for President Trump winning in this election, I would have been very fearful of what would be happening to the West in general, because America is the beacon of Western civilization as we know it.
Yeah. Fascinating talk, Hendrik. I wish we had more time. There's so much more to discuss. We'll have to get you back on to break it down further. But in the meantime, folks, you can get the book Inconvenient Minority on Amazon or wherever good books are sold. I recommend that you become informed on this. I broke it down with Glenn Beck just a few weeks ago. He said it was one of the most important interviews he had ever done in his life. And that's because, folks, we are facing what they already faced. Open borders to bring in all kinds of people to overwhelm, taking down all your statues, the same propaganda, the same hyper-racialized Marxism. It's all coming soon to a community near you. and it would behoove us all to become better informed. Hendrik, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, folks, stay with us. We'll be right back here on the Sentinel Report with much more in just a moment.
Are you concerned about your child's education? Have you considered looking into alternatives to public school but don't know where to start? Greater Than I Ministries will give you the tools you need with a free Home Educators Kit and 15% off our Thinking Like a Christian Biblical Worldview video series. Available on DVD or streamed to your home or device, this series will thoroughly equip you and your family with the truth you need about the battle of ideas being waged against our families and our nation. And our free Home Educators Kit will provide you with links directly connecting you with all the resources you need if you're considering rescuing your children from the public indoctrination schools. Go to gtimin.com and click the green banner at the top to receive your free Home Educators Kit and 15% off our Thinking Like a Christian Worldview video series. Again, that's gtimin.com and click the green banner at the top. You'll be glad you did.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, there have been some really interesting discoveries in recent months on asteroids that bring up some really significant questions about how the Earth got to looking like it does. Now, I'm sure most of you learned in your government indoctrination, public schools, and I learned when I was in school, not in government school, but still an indoctrination camp, that there was plate tectonics, whatever, and I had no reason to doubt that. But I was at a conference, a homeschool conference, just a few months ago. I gave the keynote talk there on some things, and I ran into a very interesting individual who said, no, plate tectonics is not really what happened. And he introduced me to this thing called the hydroplate theory. And it was so fascinating. I watched a few videos about it, and I don't know enough to know whether it's correct or not, but I know enough to know that this ought to be heard. In fact, this, to me at least, makes just as much sense, if not more, as the plate tectonics theory, and it seems to be pretty in line with the evidence and with what the Bible teaches. Our guest today to discuss all this is Brian Lauer. He's a biblical creation researcher. He's given talks on creation and freedom talks from Minnesota to Florida at churches, schools, colleges, conferences. You can find some of those talks on the Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel, and then the ones that would otherwise be censored are over at Revival of Truth channel on Rumble. Brian, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And it's such a pleasure. And I appreciate the microphone to get all these different ideas out there. So great job. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you trying to sound the alarm about this. I think a lot of Christians just say, well, that's secondary, and I'm just worried about Jesus. And, I understand that thinking. But I do think also that we as Christians have an obligation to try to understand things from a scriptural point of view, from a scientific point of view. And I don't believe those two are in conflict with each other. I know you don't either. Brian, let's start with these discoveries that were made on the asteroids. You mentioned the serpentine that lend credence to this hydroplate theory. Talk about these discoveries and why that's relevant to this discussion.
Yeah, an asteroid Bennu, they found serpentine, and that basically, they imagine this watery planet that was going through space that exploded. And the serpentine, and they even show the map of the mid-oceanic ridge, which is a key component in the hydroplate, because that's where we say the water shot up from. And they said that it formed there, and they imagine a watery planet. And then there's a little clip. I was on Real Science Radio, and Doug Williams says, what you've just seen here is a victim of the government education system. They won't even consider that comet or that asteroid came from Earth. And there's been accurate predictions with the hydroplate theory. They predicted they'd find rounded boulders in comets and asteroids, and Comet 67P validated that. And then they also said that asteroids would be flying rock piles and loosely held together, and that's what they are. And NASA was wrong both times. And so, yeah, Kevin Lee is an expert on this, and we're going to be giving a hydroplate seminar on Standing for Truth on July 19th at 6 p.m. So if anybody wants more detail, that's on YouTube, Standing for Truth. But yeah, it's a theory that makes accurate predictions. NASA discoveries are validating it, and yet it's being kicked to the curb by evolutionists and creationists alike. And I'm trying to bring it into the mainstream so we can destroy the Big Bang once and for all.
Yeah, let's get into this, Brian. So the theory that we all learned was that over millions or billions, soon it'll be trillions of years, the continents slowly moved away from each other, and that's how the planet ended up looking like it does. My understanding, at least my very superficial understanding of this is that the hydroplate theory holds that no, the Earth's crust is on water. And during this catastrophic great global flood that the Bible talks about and that the scientific evidence, in my opinion, is just absolutely overwhelming, showing that this occurred, we had catastrophic movement and the pressure coming out. Walk us through the basics of this theory, and then people can go watch the videos if they want to get more in-depth.
Well, it's based on one assumption. That one assumption is half of the ocean was inside the Earth at one time. That's the only assumption. See, most theories, they try and figure out what caused something to happen, where this is setting up the cause with just the one assumption. And then if that was the case, and it's got biblical support. You know, the fountains of the great deep broke up, and he laid the earth upon the waters. So there's biblical support for water being inside the earth at one time. And then you throw the moon in there, and that's going to stretch and compress the crust. See, right now, back then, the crust wasn't broken into plates like it is today. It was just the crust. And as it stretches and compresses every, twice a day with the tides and stuff, it's going to generate heat. That heat goes into the water. The water gets hotter and hotter and hotter. It wants to boil, but it can't, and then because there's no room to expand. And then at 705 degrees and 3,200 psi, it becomes supercritical water, where it's not really water and it's not really steam, but whatever it is, it dissolves things like crazy. So now it's starting to dissolve the granite above and the basalt below. And oh yeah, you might want to show that screenshot about the circle. Just think of the Earth as a big apple. The skin is 60 miles thick, made of granite, and then there's a layer of water underneath that, and then there's the basalt. Okay, and the granite and the basalt are touching at certain places. Okay, and when the water becomes supercritical, it dissolves the granite above and the basalt below, and it mixes together elements like limestone and salts and silicas and cementing agents. And then eventually, fast forward, the crust gets so weak that it splits in two directions at one time. That's what happened when the fountains of the Great Deep broke up. There's a crack in the crust. It goes in two directions all around the earth, and then comes back together like a seam on the baseball. And then it rains for 40 days and 40 nights as the water gushes out of there. It's a fountain. And people say, well, if that would have happened, wouldn't it have left a mark on the earth? And that it did. That's the mid-oceanic ridge. I don't know if you have that slide. In the middle of the ocean, it's the mid-oceanic ridge. That's a mountain range, 46,000 miles long. How does that form? By stretching in two directions. Okay, and so right now you got with the two cliffs 60 miles high, the water's shooting up with hypersonic speed, and it's eroding the granite above and on the sides and the basalt below, and that's where we get a lot of our sediment for sedimentary rock. And then eventually these cliffs get wider and wider and wider, and there's nothing to push down on the mantle, so the mantle bulges. Okay, and when it bulges, the continents start sliding, because the continents are on supercritical water, which is 50 times slicker than water. So it's just think of this big ice hockey or air hockey table. Now you can show the mountains one. The North America and South America are sliding to the east. Africa and Europe are sliding to the west, and then they buckle up when they meet resistance, and that's how we get the Rockies and the Andes, which are pretty much parallel to the mid-Atlantic ridge. Okay, and so now you got mountains, which are a big mass on a small base. They sink in, and then the plateaus, if something sinks in, something has to rise up, and that's the plateaus. That's another mystery for them. Okay, and then that's how you get Grand Canyon. That's a whole nother talk, but you can see that on my YouTube channel. Okay, so the mountains sink in, the plateaus rise up, and similarly, as the mid-oceanic ridge rises up, something has to sink in, and that's the Pacific Ocean. So the Pacific Ocean sinks in, and that's why the trenches, that's why that ocean is so much different than all the other ones. It's got all this volcanic activity and table mounts and sea mounts and trenches. Mariana Trench is a mile deeper than Everest is high. Okay, so then the water which was covering the earth gushes off the earth to fill in the Pacific Ocean, and Walt Brown thinks that happened on the 150th day of the flood. That's the eruption. You had the eruption phase of the hydroplate, and then the continental drift phase of it, which he thinks was about 24 hours. And then he thinks the mountains rose up in about an hour. Okay, as they crushed like a car accident, just crushed up there. And then as it went up, it pushed the atmosphere, and then you had this big wind coming, like a tsunami of wind going across the earth. Okay, and so then the water gushes off, cuts these canyons, which the submarine canyons are cut then. but the continental shelves are still sticking out. So it cuts the canyons, the continents sink down, and then the oceans rise up and bury those submarine canyons. And then we have the ice age, and evolutionists can't explain that, but we can. It takes a little bit of time, but we'll just fast forward. They found a mammoth standing up that was frozen in permafrost up in the Arctic Circle. How do you freeze a mammoth standing up? This is in a Russian museum, the Berezhnikov mammoth. And so what happened is some of this stuff was shooting up with such tremendous force, it got out of our atmosphere and got really cold in outer space. And then the gravity grabbed it and pulled it down, and so it buried them in muddy hail. How deep, I don't know. But that's how it froze the mammoths. And then fast forward a little bit, and some of this stuff was shooting up with such tremendous force that not only did it escape our atmosphere, it escaped our gravitational pull. So now you got this ice and dry ice and mud and stuff flying around. You got like dirty snowballs in the solar system. That'd be our comets. That's why our predictions about what they'd find in a comet were accurate and their predictions were wrong. And then also the comets, the asteroids, and the trans-Neptune objects came from Earth. And that's what the orbits are showing. That's what they're finding inside the comets and asteroids are showing. And so this is a theory that's been very robust. And they say, well, if that happened, wouldn't it leave a mark on the moon? And it's like, yeah, the near side of the moon is pounded and the far side isn't. You have all these lava flows on the near side of the moon, and that's counterintuitive because the Earth protects the near side of the moon. So it's answering all these things, and even goes on to say how he thinks radioactivity formed during the flood, but that's a whole nother topic. I would just suggest people watch Brian Nichol videos on YouTube. And also we've got some and Real Science Radio, rsr.org. When I listened to Walt Brown being interviewed, that colored in the details, and I've never seen the Earth the same or the solar system. So I'm just trying to get this into the discussion. Let's have people look at it. There should always be competing hypotheses so people can think. If they only have one that you're banging all the time, people just memorize. And that's what the evolutionists do with the plate tectonics. And that's what Christian organizations, the big ones, they only have the catastrophic plate tectonics, which is a secular model sped up. How does subduction begin? What's the mechanism? What's the force? These big plates move with those mountain roots so deep. There's a lot of unanswered questions. And then there's a book here called 20 Reasons to Question Plate Tectonics, which is really good. And also the guy who mapped the seafloor, Tectonic Globaloni. This is from N. Christian Smoot. He was in the Navy. He was measuring he was mapping the ocean floor. And what he's saying, and a lot of it was top secret, he couldn't release it, but now he says, it doesn't work. Wow. And so I think that we should have multiple competing hypotheses. At those big museums, they should have plate tectonics, catastrophic plate tectonics, and the hydroplate. Show them all, let people think instead of just what they want people to think.
Yeah, no, and after watching some of those videos and looking at some of this evidence, I agree with you. This is something that at least needs to be considered. It's something that scientists need to look at and come up with some explanations for. Brian, this has really been a pleasure. The best way for people to watch these videos that you're talking about, that would be at the Solidify Your Faith YouTube channel, and then the ones that would be censored, those are at Revival of Truth on Rumble. Is there any other place people can go to get some of these?
Yeah, I would strongly suggest Real Science Radio, rsr.org. That's a radio program, comes out once a week. And also it's also on YouTube, and listen to the Walt Brown interviews. And you can go into rsr.org/HPT, and you can download this 600-page Hydroplate book. 600-page, go into rsr.org/HPT. You see this cover, and then there's a 9th edition button underneath it, and you can click it and download it for free. And that's a good site. And then also there's so much on that website alone, like the objections to the theory and the answers to the theory. And so it's just a great source. And then Mike Snavely, he's got missionimperative.org. He's got a really good video on the Grand Staircase, how all these features around Grand Canyon came from the same event, like Zion and Bryce and the petrified trees. So anyhow, there's a lot to go into. Again, but Brian Nichol is very good at it. And then rsr.org is very good. Those are two good sources. And then I've got a Hydroplate playlist just on my YouTube channel called Solidify Your Faith. Excellent. And if you go there, you can see Walt Brown explain it himself. And so, yeah, that's a really good source. And I do appreciate you letting us get this information out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us today, Brian. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And I hope we can get you back soon to discuss this in more depth.
Amen. Thank you. Praise the Lord.
Amen. All right, folks, that is all we have time for today on the Sentinel Report. But I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to encourage you to get involved. Don't just be hearers of the word. We got to be doers. So we need to get out there and do things, not to save ourselves. We cannot save ourselves, but because God has called on us to be doers. There's so much that needs to be done. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So let's get busy. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Alex Newman. This is the Sentinel Report. Until next time, God bless you all.